The galaxy had known only one supreme ruler for millennia, the Velhorians. A species so advanced, so terrifying, that entire civilizations vanished before their might. They dominated the cosmos with unmatched strength and intellect, claiming systems and crushing opposition under their merciless claws. Each encounter ended the same: resistance extinguished, planets scorched, and species erased from existence. The Velhorians thrived on fear, hunting anything that dared challenge their superiority. No race, no species could withstand their assaults. They were the apex predators of the universe. When they first learned of humans, it wasn't through a massive battle or grand display of human ingenuity. It was an almost accidental discovery, a scouting vessel stumbling upon one of Earth's far-flung colonies. Velhorian scouts studied the humans carefully, observing them from a distance. Physically, they were unimpressive, small, fragile creatures. They lacked natural defenses, their bodies weak compared to the war-hardened Velhorians. In the eyes of the scouts, humans appeared to be another easily subdued species. This time, it would be no different. Another prey for the Velhorian Empire. When the decision to invade Earth came down from the Velhorian leadership, it wasn't out of necessity or strategy. It was simply another planet to conquer, another species to add to their long list of victims. The humans, with their inferior technology and puny stature, posed no real threat. The Velhorians had conquered worlds that were far more advanced, species that boasted weaponry and intellect superior to anything humans could hope to create. Humanity, they believed, would fold like all the rest. But things would not go as planned. The Velhorian fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, their ships casting dark shadows over the planet's surface. To them, it was nothing more than a routine operation. Yet something unexpected happened. The humans did not react as the Velhorians had anticipated. There was no immediate surrender, no panicked attempts to flee. Instead, humanity responded in ways the Velhorians had never encountered before. There was resistance, but it was not brute force or sheer numbers. It was cunning, stealth, and resourcefulness. Earth's leaders quickly realized that they were not dealing with an ordinary invader. The Velhorians, with their overwhelming firepower, seemed invincible. But humanity had one advantage that no other species had possessed before: an unparalleled ability to adapt. The Velhorians, in their arrogance, had underestimated the very thing that made humans unique. They lacked physical strength, yes, but they more than made up for it with creativity, innovation, and sheer determination. The initial Velhorian attacks were devastating. Major cities were bombarded from orbit, and millions perished in the opening salvos. But rather than being crushed, humanity rallied. Governments, once fractured and divided, united in a way the Velhorians had never expected. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked together, finding ways to exploit the Velhorian overconfidence. Hackers infiltrated Velhorian communication networks, sowing confusion and disrupting their invasion plans. Engineers repurposed Velhorian technology, turning the invaders' own weapons against them. The Velhorians, who had expected a quick and decisive victory, found themselves bogged down in a war they didn't understand. Guerrilla tactics, electronic warfare, and psychological manipulation, these were methods the Velhorians had never encountered. Humans, despite their seemingly weak appearance, fought back with ferocity and intelligence. The Velhorian Empire was built on the idea that strength and domination would always prevail, but humanity was showing them something different. This was a species that refused to be subjugated. At first, the Velhorians didn't believe they could lose. Their technology was vastly superior, and their soldiers had never tasted defeat. But as the conflict dragged on, something strange began to happen. For the first time in centuries, the Velhorians felt doubt. This was not how it was supposed to go. Every species they had ever encountered had fallen before them, but the humans were different. Their ability to adapt, to learn, and to exploit weaknesses made them unpredictable. As Velhorian ships hovered over Earth, preparing for what they believed would be their final assault, something unexpected began to unfold. Humanity, united by a common threat, had done the impossible. They had found a way to fight back, and for the first time, the Velhorians felt fear. Not of human strength, but of their resilience. Of their determination to survive. What had begun as a routine conquest was quickly turning into something much more dangerous. The initial invasion was nothing short of catastrophic. Velhorian warships descended on Earth, unleashing a devastating onslaught of firepower. Major cities crumbled under their attacks, and millions were lost in the first days. The Velhorians were efficient and methodical, confident that humanity would fall quickly, as countless others had before them. They were wrong. What the Velhorians hadn't counted on was humanity's refusal to surrender. While the devastation was immense, the global response was swift and organized. Leaders from every corner of the planet came together, setting aside differences that had plagued them for centuries. Scientists, engineers, military experts, and ordinary citizens pooled their resources, knowledge, and skills to develop a counteroffensive. This wasn't a fight that would be won by sheer force. It would require something far more powerful: ingenuity. The Velhorians, used to overwhelming their enemies with brute force, had no concept of guerrilla warfare. Humans, knowing they couldn't win in a head-on battle, took to the shadows. Small, mobile groups of fighters, hidden in cities, forests, and underground bunkers, launched hit-and-run attacks. They targeted supply lines, disabled key installations, and used the Velhorians' own arrogance against them. The Velhorians had come prepared to crush a weak species, but what they encountered was a foe that fought in ways they could never have anticipated. Hacking became one of humanity's most powerful weapons. Velhorian technology, though advanced, was not invulnerable. Skilled human hackers, some of whom were barely adults, began to infiltrate Velhorian systems, causing chaos. Communications were disrupted, ships were grounded, and key systems were taken offline. The Velhorians, who had never encountered such sophisticated cyber warfare from any species, found themselves vulnerable in ways they had never imagined. Every attack they launched seemed to be met with a counterattack from the shadows. But it wasn't just about technology. Human creativity came into play in ways the Velhorians simply couldn't comprehend. Makeshift weapons, developed in secret labs and garages, began to appear on the battlefield. Farmers turned their plows into weapons, and mechanics transformed civilian vehicles into armored units. The Velhorians, with all their technological superiority, were baffled by the humans' ability to adapt and turn everyday objects into instruments of war. As the battles raged on, the Velhorians grew frustrated. This was supposed to be a simple conquest, yet every move they made seemed to be met with resistance. No matter how many humans they killed, more seemed to rise up in their place. They tried to crush humanity's spirit by targeting key cities and infrastructure, believing that by breaking the will of the people, they could force surrender. But with each attack, humanity only grew more united. What the Velhorians failed to understand was that, unlike other species they had conquered, humans had a history of overcoming adversity. They thrived in chaos, learning from every defeat and turning it into a victory. The Velhorians soon realized they were facing something far more dangerous than physical strength: human resilience. Every attack, every setback, only seemed to make humanity stronger. Where other species had crumbled under the pressure, humans adapted. Their ability to learn, to innovate, and to rally together in the face of overwhelming odds made them unpredictable and, for the first time in Velhorian history, a real threat. As the war dragged on, it became clear that humanity's survival didn't depend on raw power but on their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. The Velhorians were powerful, yes, but they were rigid in their thinking, bound by centuries of dominance and arrogance. Humanity, on the other hand, was flexible, adaptable, and unpredictable. They turned their weaknesses into strengths, using every tool at their disposal to fight back. And the Velhorians, for the first time in their history, were forced to admit that they had underestimated their prey. The humans were not just another weak species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, a species that refused to give up, that refused to be subjugated, no matter the cost. The Velhorians' arrogance, once their greatest asset, had become their downfall. They had underestimated the humans, believing them to be weak and insignificant. But now, they were learning a painful lesson: humanity was not a species that could be easily broken. The war had reached a critical point. The Velhorians, once so confident in their swift conquest, now found themselves entangled in a conflict that was dragging on far longer than they had ever anticipated. What they thought would be a quick subjugation had become a bitter struggle. Humanity, instead of crumbling under pressure, had regrouped. And now, with their backs against the wall, humans were prepared to strike back harder than ever. Earth's major cities had suffered devastating losses. The Velhorians had expected these attacks to break humanity's spirit, believing that the destruction of their cultural and political centers would leave them hopeless. But they had miscalculated. Instead of despair, the bombings fueled a resolve that ran deeper than the Velhorians could understand. The obliteration of cities like New York, Tokyo, and London didn't weaken humanity, it united them in a way that hadn't been seen before. In the wake of these tragedies, a global alliance emerged. For the first time in history, humanity set aside national differences entirely, focusing on the survival of their species. Scientists, military leaders, and politicians worked together in a seamless coordination of effort. Resources were pooled, technologies shared, and soon, a coordinated strategy to take the fight directly to the Velhorians began to take shape. But brute force alone wouldn't win the war. Humanity's true strength lay in its ability to adapt, to find new and unexpected ways to challenge an overwhelmingly powerful enemy. Human engineers had been studying Velhorian technology since the war began, and now, they were starting to develop countermeasures. Using scavenged pieces of Velhorian ships, they reverse-engineered their systems and began creating weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of their invaders. One such weapon was the EMP system. While the Velhorians had vastly superior technology, it was highly dependent on their intricate electronic infrastructure. Humans, realizing this, developed powerful electromagnetic pulse bombs capable of disabling Velhorian systems. It was a weapon the Velhorians hadn't anticipated. In their arrogance, they believed their technology was unassailable, but they hadn't counted on humanity's resourcefulness. The first test of the EMPs was a resounding success, rendering several Velhorian ships useless in the midst of battle. But the war wasn't just about technological advancements. Humanity also knew how to strike where it hurt most, psychologically. Human intelligence networks had cracked parts of the Velhorian communication codes, using this information to disrupt their chain of command. Misinformation was spread, Velhorian fleets were misdirected, and their leaders were fed false data that led them into ambushes. The Velhorians, so used to being the hunters, found themselves confused and disoriented, their strategies falling apart as they tried to figure out what had gone wrong. For the Velhorians, this was more than just a series of tactical defeats. It was an existential crisis. They had never faced a species that fought like this. Humanity was not playing by the same rules. They weren't trying to win the war by outgunning their enemies. They were winning by thinking differently, by exploiting every vulnerability, by turning the Velhorians' own strengths into weaknesses. And then came the turning point. The Velhorians, desperate to reclaim control of the situation, decided to launch an all-out assault on Earth's remaining defensive forces. They believed that if they could crush the last human strongholds, they could finally end the war. But humanity was ready. They had anticipated this move, and instead of cowering, they prepared to spring a trap. The Velhorian fleet advanced on what they believed to be an exposed human base near Jupiter. But what they didn't know was that humanity had fortified this position with everything they had. Hidden within the asteroids and moons surrounding Jupiter were human strike forces, armed with the latest weaponry. As the Velhorian ships moved in, the trap was sprung. Human forces attacked from all sides, catching the Velhorians off guard. The EMPs were deployed en masse, disabling many Velhorian ships before they could even fire a shot. In the chaos that followed, the Velhorians found themselves overwhelmed. Their technological superiority meant nothing if they couldn't use it. Their ships, floating dead in space, were easy targets for the human fighters, who tore through the Velhorian ranks with precision and determination. It was a devastating defeat for the Velhorians. What had once been an unstoppable force in the galaxy was now retreating, battered and humiliated. They had never encountered a species that could adapt so quickly, that could learn from every battle and turn the tide against such overwhelming odds. The Velhorians, for the first time in their history, had been outmatched, not by superior firepower, but by sheer human ingenuity. Humanity had done the impossible. They had faced an enemy that should have crushed them, and yet, through a combination of innovation, strategy, and relentless determination, they had not only survived but had begun to turn the tide of the war. The Velhorians, once confident in their inevitable victory, now found themselves retreating, unsure of what their next move would be. The humans, however, knew that the fight was far from over. This was just the beginning of a long and dangerous road. But they had proven one thing beyond a doubt: they would not be conquered. They would not be prey. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with them. The Velhorians had never tasted defeat, not like this. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were retreating. Their once indomitable fleet, the terror of the galaxy, had been humbled by a species they had barely considered a threat. But the humans had proven to be far more than just another prey. They were survivors, and more than that, they were strategists, able to outmaneuver and outthink even the most advanced species. The final battle near Jupiter had been a disaster for the Velhorians. What had begun as a simple operation to wipe out Earth's last defenses had turned into a slaughter, but not in the way they had expected. Velhorian ships, once symbols of power and fear, floated lifeless in space, their systems crippled by human-designed EMP blasts. The few remaining Velhorian vessels that still had power fled, their commanders too shaken to continue the assault. For humanity, this victory was more than just a turning point in the war. It was a message. The galaxy had always seen humans as insignificant, a small, fragile species confined to a single planet. But now, they had proven themselves as more than capable defenders of their home. They had done what no other species could: they had made the Velhorians bleed. Back on Earth, the mood was not one of celebration, but of determination. This was no time for complacency. While the battle had been won, the war was far from over. Humanity knew the Velhorians would not simply vanish into the stars. They would regroup, they would rethink their strategies, and they would return. But this time, the humans would be ready. They had learned from every encounter, grown stronger with each setback, and now, they were ready to take the fight beyond their planet. The global alliance that had formed during the war continued to strengthen. Nations that once viewed each other as rivals now worked together seamlessly. The sharing of technology and knowledge had accelerated human advancement in ways that had been unimaginable before the war. What began as a desperate struggle for survival had turned into a period of rapid innovation and progress. Earth scientists and engineers, inspired by the challenge of facing an enemy as powerful as the Velhorians, pushed the boundaries of what was possible. New spacecraft were being built, faster and more advanced than anything that had come before, and weapons capable of standing up to even the most formidable alien technologies were being developed in secret laboratories. But even with all this newfound strength, humanity understood that the key to their survival wasn't in matching the Velhorians ship for ship or weapon for weapon. It was in continuing to do what they had always done, outthinking their enemies. The Velhorians had ruled through brute force and fear, believing that sheer power was enough to control the galaxy. Humans knew better. Their strength lay in their adaptability, their creativity, and their ability to find solutions where none seemed possible. As the Velhorian fleet limped back to its homeworld, the leaders of the Empire were forced to confront a reality they had never considered. Humanity, this seemingly insignificant species, had forced them into a retreat. They had underestimated their prey, and now, they were paying the price. Discussions began among the Velhorian elite. Some argued for an immediate counterattack, while others, shaken by the defeat, advocated for caution. But the truth was clear to all of them: humanity was no longer just a minor annoyance. They were a genuine threat. The Velhorian Emperor, a figure of both fear and reverence within the Empire, was particularly troubled by the reports coming in. This was not just a military failure, it was a failure of understanding. The humans had shown them something they had never seen before, a species that, despite its physical weaknesses, could outwit and outlast even the most fearsome predators. The Emperor knew that the Velhorian Empire would need to change if it was to survive this new challenge. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. The war had taught them not only about the Velhorians but about themselves. They had seen the worst of their enemy and endured the darkest days of their history, yet they had emerged stronger. They had proven that their will to survive, their capacity to innovate, and their ability to come together in times of crisis were their greatest assets. Now, the question was no longer about whether they could defend themselves, it was about what they would do next. The Global Alliance began discussing humanity's future in the galaxy. Earth's leaders knew that simply waiting for the Velhorians to return was not an option. They needed to expand, to explore, and to prepare for whatever threats might be lurking in the stars. Plans were laid out for the colonization of nearby star systems, for the construction of new space stations and defense platforms, and for alliances with other alien species that had once lived in fear of the Velhorians. And so, humanity began its next chapter. What had started as a fight for survival had become something far greater. They were no longer just defending their planet, they were preparing to take their place among the stars. The Velhorians had ruled the galaxy for millennia, but now, they would have to reckon with a new power. Humans, once prey, had proven themselves as a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never be the same.